Friends, I welcome you all. The topic of my presentation is eco-consciousness and life situation in understanding cross-cultural bioethics. I would like to dedicate this paper to our great friend, late Professor Azaria, who I would say is the father of bioethics in India. We have been very much influenced by him, and at least for the past 4 or 5 years I had the opportunity of bringing him, accompanying from Chennai to this place, and it is most unfortunate that we missed him this time. So I would like to dedicate this paper in memory of Professor Azaria. Friends, I would like to start my discussion with a beautiful quotation by Daryl Mazur, who very rightly said, I would like to quote him, "Bioethics is a law of life, reflecting the hope that bioethics should value life in a process involving emotions and rationality." This would be the starting point for my discussion on the cross-cultural bioethics in the context of eco-consciousness. How do we define eco-consciousness? Philosophers have been talking about consciousness from different perspectives, but eco-consciousness is something different, and only the bioethicist can define the nature of eco-consciousness. Let me go further on this. But prior to that, I would like to say, for Mazur, the concept of bioethics can be seen in literature, art, music, culture, philosophy, and religion. So Dr. Mazur is of the view that bioethics is reflected in different disciplines, and I would like to see this from my own perspective. That is a philosophical perspective, which I would restrict to Hindu philosophical discourse or Indian philosophical discourse. So what I am going to do in this short presentation is to analyze the problem of eco-consciousness from Indian philosophical perspective. I would like to take both the ancient as well as the contemporary perspective, some thinkers like Mahatma Gandhi and others, who have stressed the need for eco-consciousness. So, according to Mazur, every culture has developed bioethics, and for him, the sustainable future, we have to promote harmony. And the word harmony, which he has used, has got a lot of implication, because it is the harmonious and the holistic living which is very much emphasized in bioethics perspective. One of the important aspects of bioethics is to develop a transpersonal ethics or transdisciplinary content of knowledge. Because all the time we are compartmentalizing the disciplines by saying that I belong to philosophy, he belongs to religion, he belongs to anthropology. Such a narrow scope of approaching problems will not help us. So what I would like to suggest is a transdisciplinary or interdisciplinary approach which can give us some proper guidance for understanding bioethics. So in bioethics, understanding cultural diversity and values are most important. That is the reason why I have chosen, or I have used the word cross-cultural bioethics. That this is a platform for us to have a cross-cultural understanding. That in culture we share a lot of things in common. So in cross-cultural understanding, the heritage, tradition, values, all these play a significant role. Also in cross-cultural bioethics, different tradition can be compared. In fact, in my approach, I have made a comparative approach of Confucius with Indian knowledge system, especially the Upanishads. Now, let me now go to the exact title, eco-consciousness. What does it mean, or how do we define eco-consciousness? Now, normally philosophers define the word consciousness by saying that it is nothing but awareness. That is, awareness of one's own self and the awareness of others. And here, the Eastern and Western perspective of consciousness, there are a lot of differences, I would say. I would try to approach this problem from the Asian perspective, which I think is a proper perspective, or I would say it has got more advantages than the Western perspective. The Western perspective which I would like to apply here is the phenomenological approach of consciousness. The attempt made by Husserl, for example, who is said to be the important philosopher in the field of phenomenology. He talks about the intentionality of consciousness, and for him the consciousness is very much limited to objects, for example. That is the reason why Husserl, the Western philosopher, says that things are always related to consciousness when there is some object is in front of you, which means there is always the intentionality of consciousness, and this of, the word of, OF in inverted commas, is something very important, because consciousness, in order to be meaningful, must always be related to some object. So it is very clear from the phenomenological standpoint at least that consciousness is very much limited to object. But there is also another important perspective which I think is very important. That is the approach given by the Asian tradition, especially the Chinese tradition, the Confucius tradition, and the Indian philosophical tradition. Now, Confucius is a very important philosopher in understanding the notion of consciousness, because he found a basic moral law operating from which no man can escape. So Confucius, it is interesting to note that Confucius talks about the moral order. Now, such a moral order very much can be seen in Indian perspective also. So Confucius discovered the same moral order controlling the universe, and made a natural deduction that when there is a harmony with the central self, human beings are moving in the orbit of cosmic or universal harmony. In short, one can say it was Confucius who made it clear to us that there should be universal harmony. So while explaining human nature, for example, Confucius says as follows, I quote him, "What is God-given is what we can call human nature. The cultivation of moral law is what we call culture. Wherefore, the moral man watches dignity over his secret thoughts." I stop here with this quotation, then I'll move forward. Now, this approach we can see in Indian perspective also. Because in India, philosophy is always value-centered. In fact, philosophy is otherwise known as a philosophy of values. It is its central focus is on the values. In fact, one of the greatest philosophers of India, Hiriyana, he says philosophy as understood in India was essentially concerned with the values. So it is otherwise known as Loka Sangraha. I would like to translate this word, because the Loka Sangraha is a Sanskrit word. It means the moral order or the welfare of all. And I would like to say that Confucius has also echoed his voice in a similar terms. So the Loka Sangraha, or the welfare of all, is the central focus in bioethics. Now, the ecological consciousness, I would like to see how some of the Western thinkers have approached the ecological consciousness or environmental consciousness. There are great examples which are available in philosophy. For example, Leopold is one important thinker, and another thinker is Berland, and another important thinker is Carlson. And similarly, in ancient philosophical tradition, ancient Indian tradition give various examples for that. And the best example which is available in the contemporary period is our great leader Mahatma Gandhi. The eco-consciousness or aesthetics is also known as eco-consciousness is also known as eco-aesthetics, for example, is based on interpretational understanding of ecology. Now, this interpretational ecology is very much important because it is not simply the presentation of what it is. We need to interpret nature. We need to interpret our way of life. That is the reason why philosophers in the 20th century and the 21st century stress more on what is known as the hermeneutical understanding of nature. So, the eco-consciousness or aesthetics is nothing but the interpretational understanding of nature. This means, prior to the emergence of this eco-consciousness, we have been thinking that the entire nature exists for the sake of utilization of a human being. We wrongly thought that it is nature is given to us, nature is available to us so that we can exploit it to its maximum. But the eco-consciousness or eco-aesthetics pictures the nature in a different perspective. They say it is an interpretational understanding. You have to interpret nature. That one modern philosopher in India, he said that we are nothing but the guest of nature. No, the guest of nature means that we have to participate in nature, we have to appreciate the nature, and we have to be one with nature. So this holistic presentation of human beings as well as nature is something which is very much stressed in Indian philosophical tradition. I'll go quickly. One important paper which has emerged in this context is the contemporary aesthetics and the neglect of natural beauty by Hepburn is one of the important thinkers who stressed on this eco-consciousness. He says that human beings are all the time neglecting the natural beauty. And similarly, another important thinker, Berland, he talks about what is known as aesthetic engagement, which exemplifies the need for the aesthetic appreciation of nature. There are also other important thinkers, of course I am not mentioning all of them. The environmental understanding has given a new approach to aesthetics problems, which is exhibited in the writings of Fisher. Fisher is another important thinker. I'll go to the next slide. So the environmental aesthetics is a response to environmental problems which need our attention and care. So the need for public awareness and action on environmental issues is important. This is my focal point, that we must aware of the existence of nature, which means we must utilize it to the minimum level. The need to protect nature, like any artwork, is a view maintained by great thinkers like Hargrove and Thompson. Now we protect the artifacts and artwork, then we protect the monuments. So nature must also be protected like that. They claim, these thinkers claim that nature is valuable like artworks, and hence nature has to be preserved for its aesthetic qualities. So we have an obligation to protect nature, and hence it is anthropocentric. It is anthropocentric. Actually, I am prescribing or suggesting a need for taking a shift from anthropocentric to cosmocentric vision. But at the same time, I would like to say nature has to be protected by human being. So in one way, it is anthropocentric. In this way, one can say it is anthropocentric. Now, a respect for life is emphasized by cross-cultural bioethic theories, both in Indian philosophical tradition as well as Western philosophical tradition. So the goal of life is completed only human beings serve as a custodian of nature. And this custodian of nature is a very important point which has been stressed by Mahatma Gandhi also, because he uses the word trusteeship, which I shall discuss later. So not only nature, now how to protect nature? Now we are concerned all the time, we are concerned about animate beings. But philosophers, especially ancient Indian philosophers, stressed on inanimate nature also. So both animate and inanimate form the part of nature, and human beings have the responsibility to take care of them. Then, this we can see from ancient tradition. For example, in the ancient tradition of Indian philosophy, one can see how they preserve the forest, for example. The people of the hills saw the interrelations between the forest cover and ecological stabilization. As a result of that, the policy makers began to view forests are not production centers, because most of the time we consider forest as a production center. But we must also note the fact that the forests are nothing but protection centers. So the contribution of indigenous people and natives are important. Especially in Indian context, I would say the contribution of the tribals are very much important in taking care of the forests. So the concept of sustainable development is closely related to eco-consciousness. Now, if you look at the UN Commission of Environment and Development, they put forward a notion of sustainable development in the following way. They define what is sustainable development. They say, I quote, development that meets the need of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. This means the nature has to be protected for the future also. In fact, Maser in one of his papers argued that if we exploit the nature too much, then what is the world, or what is the what kind of world which you are going to give for the future generation? What world you are going to give for your children, for example, he said. So the unsustainable patterns of development pursued by many countries without taking into consideration its environmental impacts and responsibility to the future generation are alarming, no doubt. We have one earth and we have one life. So what do we give for the future generations? This is a question which the bioethics should ask. So the sustainable development which the UN has prescribed has got two important concepts. One, the first one is the needs, in particular, the essential needs of the world, poor to which overriding priority should be given. The second is very important, limitation in the environment's ability to meet the present and the future needs. So these are the two important key concepts which emerges in the context of sustainable development. So human beings as a constituent of environment interacts continuously with plants, animals and non-living beings such as light, temperature, water, soil, etc. So we are also influencing our environment by our social attitude. This is also very important. Our social attitude such as land use, transportation, disposal of waste and misuse of resources. So these are some of the important factors which we have to take into consideration while discussing bioethics in the context of eco-consciousness. Now Hindu philosophy or Indian philosophy, because I would like to use the word interchangeably, this concept has been discussed in detail. For example, we believe in the concept of dharma. Dharma is a Sanskrit word, but quite often it is equated with virtuous life, though this equivalent is not proper. It is a word which comes very close to dharma. So we are using in English, in the context of dharma, sometimes we use the word virtuous life also. So dharma recognizes the sustainability of everything. Human beings have indebtedness to other human beings and the life forms on earth. This is in short the principle of dharma. And the ancient sages lives in the concept of they had a harmonious life which is based on the principle of dharma. And our ethical text Bhagavad Gita, for example, says that the members of the society has to perform the duty towards nature. So this means each and every individual has a swadharma. This is known as swadharma. One's own duty is swadharma. So our duty is to preserve nature. So nobody can escape from this swadharma. In fact, the Rig Veda, one of the ancient Vedas of India, it says, trees give life to those who care for others. They have to keep standing in the sun, but they give shade to others. Whatever fruits they bear, they do not themselves, but give them to others. How kind they are. This is a sloka or a hymn which is given in the Rig Veda. Then, customs and culture, moral and ethical values represents the significance of eco-consciousness. So in short, we can say eco-consciousness represents the customs of the society and culture, moral and ethical values. So these constitute the eco-consciousness. And in different religions as well as philosophical understanding, we can see how the nature has been preserved. The 5 elements, because Indian philosophers give importance to the Panchabhutas, which is otherwise known as 5 great elements like earth, water, fire, space and air, they represent their life. So you can see how there is a coordination between human beings and nature. And we are more concerned about the internal as well as the external environment, the holistic approach which is very much essential, and there is a synthesis among man, nature and society. This forms a triangle. Then man's participation is a care and concern for the society. And in Rig Veda, once again I would like to quote, in Rig Veda, there is a reference to the principle called Rita. Rita means a moral order. Rita is a Sanskrit word once again, but it means the moral order. The moral order which is reflected in the philosophy of Confucius could be seen from Rig Veda perspective also. So the Rig Veda or our ancient Veda represents how there could be a coordination in moral order. And we have protected the sacred groves. I will go to the next slide because of that. Then there was a traditional practice of water harvesting system. Now in the 20th century we have been talking about water harvesting system, but if you look at the ancient philosophical tradition in India, you can see how they preserved water and water systems and how this water harvesting system was practiced, followed. Then in Hindu way of life is something which is remarkable. For example, we have got 3 great thinkers, Acharyas. They are known as Acharyas, Shankara, Ramanuja and Madhva, who talked about what is known as the God-nature relationship. And also we are concerned about one important concept which has been playing a very important role in the Hindu view of life, that is Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam. This is a Sanskrit word, but this means the world, the entire world is considered as one family. And then Buddhist philosophy, because Buddhist philosophy also talks about the interrelation that exists between human nature and then the concept of non-violence. And similarly, the Jain philosophy. The Jain philosophy, I would say, is the best philosophy which is available in the Indian subcontinent, because it is a philosophy which allows the principle of coexistence. Because it does not say that one philosophy is relevant all the time. It believes in the philosophy of the concept of relation, which means no philosophy, they say, is something absolute, all the time valid. So it has got a relevance, which means it accommodates. It is nothing but it accommodates different perspectives which are very much available. That is the reason why modern philosophers compare Jainism with the postmodern tradition, where we find such a concept. Then human beings have a dignity and responsibility, that every individual and every culture has the intrinsic dignity and inalienable right, and he has the responsibility towards both living and non-living. And then the role of bioethics, biosafety and ethical implication of genetic engineering all play a significant role. Okay, but mere theoretical, we have been theorizing all the time, mere theoretical discussion will not help us. So there is a need to apply our mind to this theory so that we can make it practical. So the biophilia is one concept which has developed. I'll take just 1 second to finish. So there is a need for a philosophical approach, and I feel that many contemporary thinkers have emphasized the need for that, and this is possible provided we consider nature as something very much essential for human life. And there were thinkers like Gandhi and others, Tagore and others, who have emphasized the need for this thing. Then finally, this is my last slide, where I would like to say that in a philosophical discussion, two things are important. One is that one must develop what is known as a transpersonal ethics. This is a conclusion. Just I'll take 1 minute. It is harmony with nature. Then there should be what is known as peaceful coexistence. Then sustainable development. Then appreciation of nature and preservation for the future. Then traditional and indigenous values must be preserved. Then love towards the entire cosmos. Then involvement of the community. This is possible provided the whole community is involved. Then we have the responsibility and commitment. Then intercultural understanding. So this is the sum and substance of my presentation. And
thank you. So we had a presentation about the eco-consciousness from an Indian perspective. What I can say as a discussion for this presentation is a reference to the Japanese way of eco-consciousness when they talk about Satoyama and Satoumi, how traditional Japanese society came to a solution, how to live with nature, how to use nature in a more or less sustainable manner. So in a lot of Japanese schools now, the concept of Satoyama and Satoumi is discussed, is done, is researched. So do you have any questions from Professor Paneerselvam?
Good morning, Professor Paneerselvam.
Good morning.
We were colleagues, but I would like to question you.
Yeah.
You have been mentioning about the philosophy of Hinduism, religious philosophy. But I would like to ask you one question. In spite of all the religious philosophers and dharma and eco-consciousness, but I don't think today Indians are like that. They also kill all animals and they eat meat of all animals. And Indians also, they are very violent with animals before they kill. And they mention what you call playing with the ox. Like what happens in Spain, where they are trying to control the ox. But here they are also showing violence, and maybe ox has also shown violence to them. So PETA has been there to prevent such violence against animals. And I would like to say that Indians eat not only animals, birds, insects, everything. Would you like to mention all that? You have not mentioned any of that. Because I have mentioned that in my paper.
Yes.
I would like you to answer.
Thank you very much, madam. She is my good friend. So friends always trouble. So madam is not an exception, but I'm happy to answer her because I differ from her on one aspect. And this what is that? Before that, see, Hindu philosophy, no doubt, has allowed animal sacrifice. In fact, if you look at the Rig Veda, the cows were sacrificed. That is very important for the Brahmins, in fact, who practice that. Okay, but apart from that, I would also say, because of the influence of Buddhism and Jainism, the Hindu philosophers try to appreciate the animals, birds and nature. So both are taking place simultaneously, no doubt. But I wouldn't say that Hindu philosophy is free from killing animals and birds. In fact, it is a part of Hinduism, no doubt. But now we are trying to revive it. In fact, even now, yesterday I was mentioning this in my talk for the ego students that in villages, every family has a village deity. I have a village deity. So we are supposed to go to that village at yearly once and celebrate. I mean, we have to perform some puja. But there are many people, of course we don't do that. They cut animals there and offer sacrifice to God. But we are not doing that. So it depends on your attitude towards your religion. So it depends. But this is what I would like to say. But no doubt Hindus eat animals, birds, everything. But at the same time, now there is a revival. There is a revival in the sense that now many people turn to become vegetarian. So there is awareness that is coming. But with regard to one point, which you talked about this Jallikattu, I would like to, because this is an international audience, so I must stress my point. This is very much essential, so I don't want to miss this opportunity. Now, this Jallikattu, this is called Jallikattu in Tamil. It means taming of the bull. Okay, taming of the bull. Now this actually happens during the month of January, after the harvest season. But the PETA, that is those who think that they are supporters of the animal welfare and all, they have gone to the court and got a stay from the Supreme Court saying that this should be banned, and Supreme Court has banned also. Now, this is one thing. Now, this cannot be compared to something what is happening in Spain, because finally the bull is killed there, but we are not killing. Here, the man tries to show his valor, and also at the same time the animal also, because they train the animal, the owner of the animal, they train it for the whole year in order to allow it to participate in this fight. So this actually it represents our culture. The cultural ethos are involved in that. We are not ready to sacrifice, as I said yesterday, we are not ready to sacrifice our cultural values in the name of this PETA or something like that. Why? Because we believe that if you put a ban on that, then you are not allowing us to play our role as a cultural citizens of a particular tradition, because that belongs to our tradition. From the ancient, you know very well, from the ancient tradition onwards, from the time of Sangam literature, we have been doing this. But if we are not harming the animal, please note that. But so, if something you are trying to hurt my culture, you are trying to make some damage with my culture, then there will be a protest. And this is what has happened. Now you won't believe, or you might have seen that in newspapers and TV shows that for more than 15 days, people protested like anything, and Tamil Nadu became a standstill. Nothing could happen. So as a result of that, it was allowed, and now we are doing that. So there are two things: whether you are hurting the animal, whether you are emphasizing, you are proving that you have your own culture, which is very important. So these two things should not be clubbed, I think. So this is my answer. So I partially agree with you and partially disagree with you.
Yeah. No.
Yes.
Okay.
Sir.
Can I continue? Yeah, I mean, my question is, you see, if you read the history of the American Constitution, there was a time when they said all men are equal, all men are what they say, all men are created equal, but it don't apply to the Black Americans or to women. Now my question is, according to the eco-consciousness philosophy you're talking about in India, which I think I must congratulate Derek for bringing us together, because if you look at the Ubuntu philosophy in Africa, it talks most of the issue you're talking about. But my question is, how does it reconcile with the caste system in India?
With casteism.
Yeah, caste. I mean, the where you fall.
The hierarchy. This is a very important question, which I would say has no solution at all. But let me try. This eco-consciousness, where I've been emphasizing the need for interrelation among nature and human beings.
Now you said welfare for all.
Yeah, welfare of all.
Yeah.
I use the word Loka Shankraga, that is the community welfare. But at the same time, it is most unfortunate that we are talking about Varna. Varna means color, that is human beings are divided on the basis of color. That is, it is said, as I discussed yesterday, there is a hierarchy among human beings. Some is considered to be very superior, who are Brahmanas, then Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Sudras. The fourth class is Shudra, they are working class, they have to work for the other class. This is how the Indian class structure or the social stratification of India goes. But it is argued by our traditional philosophers that this classification is not based on the caste, because they say that India didn't have any caste classification. It is based on one's own duty towards the society. That is the reason which they have classified the human society, as Plato has divided human society into 3 categories. They say it is also classified into 4 categories. But later, that is after the emergence of Manu Dharma, they call Manu Dharma, Dharma means virtuous, this thing. After the emergence of Manu Dharma, this has a caste connection. There it is said that the Brahmins, who are supposed to be the Brahmins, they are not allowed to do any menial jobs. They can only recite the mantras. That's what they said. So there is a change that has taken place. In fact, in the Upanishads, it is said in the ancient tradition, it is said one who is born as a Sudra can become a Brahmin by doing good actions. And similarly, a Brahmin who is not performing his duty will come down to this thing. This is how it is structured initially, but later it has got different meaning altogether. But in the contemporary field, in the contemporary scenario, we are not ready to accept the 4 classification, because I am one who is fighting against this caste system all the time. Who I have been writing on this issue, saying why? Because now as per the Indian Constitution, we talk about social justice. We talk about the equality of all human beings. So you can't make some people as higher and some people as lower. So this is also the debate, especially after the emergence of great leaders like Ambedkar and Periyar, Pune and others. There is a social, this is considered as a social evil. So this is a problem. No. I don't say that we are free from this caste system. It is still, it is in the minds of the people all the time, no doubt.
I don't know how you have a good presentation, but there's so much at stake of being human, because moral dilemma is really on our part, how to strike the balance, to balance ourselves with other organisms or beings. My question is, how do we really define harmony or balance? Like for example, why should we not consume like poultry or eating meat, and at the same time advocating harmony or eco-consciousness? So what is really, how do we, in whose paradigm do we really take in terms of balance or harmony with all the beings? Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your very interesting question. How to strike a balance? This is a problem, no doubt, but I would like to say that there should be a coordination between human beings and nature and I mean they are both animate and inanimate beings, in the sense that no one can say that you have to stop here because eating chicken or mutton or anything is part of, it has become a part of human life. In fact, one of my professors said in a joke, he said he made a joke on this. He said, if we don't kill the chicken, then the entire world will be full of chicken. That's what he said. I mean, it's a joke. No, so I mean, I'm trying to tell you that whether we can make an attempt to strike a balance between these two. We human beings is the custodian of nature. So you can, I don't know how to explain this. You can consume, I don't know. But at the same time, you must have a love towards nature. You must have a love towards animal beings, plants. Beyond that, I am unable to solve this problem. This is a problem. It is very difficult to reconcile these two. But at the same time, you can't destroy everything for your own consumption. This is what is emphasized in eco-consciousness. That is the reason why we are talking about the sustainable development, where you use it for your consumption to a limit and then stop. That is the reason why Mahatma Gandhi, for example, prescribed the philosophy of trusteeship. You are not the owner, please note. You are not the owner. You can use it to a minimum level. This is what it means.
Sorry, can I add another question there?
Yeah.
I just want to build on what the question he asked. I mean, the question of plants, because you are advocating we shouldn't eat, we shouldn't eat chicken, whatever, and we should go to vegetarian, but the plants have also the same rights. And we were saying that, if we allow so many chickens, it's a joke, but at the same time, we keep on planting what? Trees.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole place is for trees, so why not so many chickens?
Trees, actually, there was one sage, that's in our place, Tamil Nadu state. He is a 20th century sage. He is Kanchi Acharya, Kanchi Paramacharya. Because this question was raised to him. Okay, you say people should not eat meat. Okay, fine. But no, you are killing the plant. You are consuming so much vegetarian plants. You are taking a lot of fruits. So that also a sort of killing. Then he answered that one can eat a fruit or vegetable which can grow again. For example, if you eat a mango, the seed you throw, from it can emerge another tree, but it will not happen to chicken.
Chicken can be produced.
Not that chicken. That chicken is in your stomach.
I don't know.
No, this is one example he gave.
It's a fun example.
Yeah.
Okay, time is up, but let's go to the next presentation, Mr. Kodama.
Thank you very much. Thank you.